Welcome back to Front Page Close-Up. It's our third and final part with Stanley Kurtz, the author of the new book, Radical in Chief, Barack Obama and the Untold Story of American Socialism. Stanley, welcome back to our final part.
Jamie, great to be here.
Let me ask you this. You say in your book that Obama's past maybe matters more than the present. Why would you say that? Some people would say it's over, it's done. Maybe he changed his mind, maybe he's different now.
Right. You know, if Obama had spoken to the country at some point during his presidency and said, look, this is where I'm coming from. These are my political views. These are my long-term plans. Then I wouldn't say that his past matters more than the present. And of course we know that Ronald Reagan, say, was very frank with the American public. He said, hey, I'm a conservative. This is what I believe. And in that way, actually, I think he brought a lot of the country along with him. Obama hasn't done that. Instead, he said, you know, I'm a progressive, but really most of my big proposals are just attempts to save the system from this crisis that it's in. I'm just doing a bunch of pragmatic fixes here. I don't think Obama is being honest with the public, and the mind of the president is crucial because not only do we get laws passed, but the president has to run how they're going to be regulated, how they're going to be enforced and enacted. And if, in his mind, he wants to transform the country quite radically, rather than just tweak the system so that it works a little bit better, there's a huge difference between those alternatives. And when you look at his past, I think the arrows all point very clearly in the direction of this radical transformation. And since he hasn't honestly told the public about that, since he hasn't leveled with the public about any ideological point of view he might have, I think we have to look to his past.
Stanley, speaking of his past, I don't think a lot of Americans know this. Barack Obama's idol was once, or maybe continues to be, Saul Alinsky. Tell our viewers a bit about who Saul Alinsky was and what Obama thought about him and what that means.
Well, there's no doubt that Saul Alinsky was a man of the left, even the far left. He was not a member of the Communist Party, but he did work closely with the communists of his day. He was what you would call a fellow traveler. But the interesting thing, and I focus on this in the book, is that Alinsky had a number of successors in Chicago. These were the graduates of the New Left, the Radical Students for a Democratic Society, who studied with Alinsky during the later years of Alinsky's life. And they created a theory of community organizing that was, on the one hand, even more explicitly socialist than Alinsky's, but also very stealthy, as we said on one of the earlier segments. And the big change they made from Saul Alinsky was they blended community organizing with national politics in a much more deliberate fashion than had ever been done. So here you got the techniques of Alinsky, which were to downplay your overt ideology and to use the grievances of people in whatever neighborhood you were in to somehow channel them a little closer to long-term socialist goals. But now you had that combined with radicals who had a very explicit electoral strategy in mind. And those are the people that really trained Obama.
Not only have you had difficulty, or did you have difficulty in writing the book in terms of accessing this, the documents, etc., and I want to stress again that I think that, am I correct, your book is unprecedented in terms of the documents that you did discover. Can you talk a little bit about the research?
Well, sure. I went from library to library. It was really a bit of a detective story. You would follow a kind of a trail. At first, I really wasn't looking for socialism. I was looking for politics, and obviously I expected to find some political radicalism. But you go to one library, and you see some documents for these socialist conferences. And I was amazed to see people who were truly important in Obama's life and career many years later as an adult had attended these conferences. Mm-hmm. And then I said, wow, this is amazing. And I started following that trail. You go to another archive that is you got to because there was a clue in the first archive, and you find more. And then sometimes you go around in circles from place to place, putting together the clues. Sometimes you find a document, and you don't even realize how important it is until months later, when you can finally put the pieces of the puzzle together. So no, people haven't done that sort of research, and that's what really the book is based on.
Let me ask this. What attracts Obama to socialism?
I think in addition to, we could say, the usual sense of wanting to bring social justice, a certain vision of social justice, Obama is a person who never had a home. He felt not quite a part of any specific community. He had traveled all around the world. He had not really been raised as an African American. I think he found a sense of belonging through politics. And actually, I think a lot of Americans on the left today turn to the left for the same reason. We are a less rooted society. We are a more individualized society. And I think you gain a sense of community in some ways nowadays by being part of a political movement.
Is he trying, as an African American, to redress some kind of racial injustice from the past? Is race involved in his socialist view?
I think it's an element of it, and he has said that himself in his own writings, but I do think in the end the universal socialist message is the most powerful for him. I think being part of the left did help Obama to cement his sense of affiliation with African American communities. But I do think his leftism goes beyond that. And it really is, in the end, the universalist element is the most important.
Something that a lot of people find very troubling, certainly I do, whenever you have an American president that turns against Israel, we had that with Jimmy Carter, arguably Obama might even be worse. What do you see behind that? He's turned on our great ally in the Middle East. And talk a little bit about Rashid Khalidi and what's going on with that connection there. I think that's one in the same package deal there.
Well, of course, Obama was friends with Rashid Khalidi, who is a very prominent activist for the Palestinians. And in general, Barack Obama has lived all over the world and thinks of American exceptionalism as to some degree wrong-headed. And America's, what you could call special relationships with Britain, with Israel, I think they all suffer somewhat under the Obama administration. Obama sees himself as, and wanting to bring America into a greater connection with the entire world and to loosen up its historic connections. I think he sees that as a movement toward a beneficial universalism, whereas others would look at that and say that is really turning against what has made America distinctive.
We have about 2 minutes left. How have you been accepted? How has your book been accepted in the left-wing media, in the mainstream media, by The Nation magazine, by CNN? Are you getting into the mainstream media at all, into our higher literary culture?
The mainstream media has ignored the book, and obviously the left wing. I've gotten a few potshots lately from the left. They found it a little more difficult to ignore because there was one interesting phenomenon over at Slate. David Weigel, a left-leaning reporter who specializes in the world of conservatism, wrote a critical but also very respectful review of the book, acknowledging that the reporting in the book is original and makes a real contribution. And I had a little debate with him back and forth, and it's become a little harder than it used to be, even because of that one thing, to fully ignore the book. But still, in all, for the most part, the mainstream media continues to ignore it.
If the American people looked into the future in 2007, 2008, before the election, and somehow were able to read this book, do you think that Barack Obama would have been elected as President of the United States?
I really don't, and a lot of people say that after reading the book, that if we had known this in 2008, he wouldn't have been elected, and I frankly think that is true.
Stanley Kurtz, 2012. If Obama gets elected. After reading this book, I got scared. Before we leave, do you have a warning to the American people if the radical in chief is reelected in 2012?
Well, the book is the warning, and once he gets reelected, of course, he has to be a lot less careful than he's going to be for the next 2 years. So I would be scared about that because I do think he has big plans for transforming the country, and once he's secured his reelection, he's going to be a heck of a lot freer.
What's the worst case scenario?
Well, the worst case scenario is that he puts us on an irreversible path, that not only does he take us as far down the road toward a European-style socialism as he can in the time that he has, but that he gets the debt into such a situation and the economy into such a situation, the entitlements into such a situation, that it's almost impossible politically to peel it back. And I think that's his real goal.
It was an honor to have you here, Stanley Kurtz, and thank you for having the courage for writing such an important book.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie.
And thank you for joining us for Front Page Close-Up, Radical in Chief, a vital and important book. Buy it. We'll see you again soon.